Please be advised that this episode contains discussions about sexual abuse. If you find this episode distressing or you'd like more support, please contact Lifeline on 131114 or 1-800-RESPECT on 1-800-737-732 at any time. If you're in immediate danger, please call 000. This is Ask a Couples Counsellor, a show that answers all the relationship questions you're too afraid to ask. On the show, we'll take your questions and give you the tools you need to build trust and intimacy with your partner. I'm your host, Neha Kapoor. I'm a registered clinical counsellor and psychotherapist, and I'm really passionate about helping couples navigate the challenges that we all go through. Because after all, every relationship encounters some stormy weather now and then. Hello and welcome to another episode of Ask a Couples Counsellor. I'm truly grateful you're here with me today as we address an incredibly important and sensitive topic: sexual abuse and child abuse. This issue impacts far too many lives and often leaves lasting scars. And it's one that many of my clients seek to understand better. In this episode, we'll discuss the process of grooming in cases of sexual abuse, shedding light on how abusers manipulate trust and create dependency. We'll also explore the vital signs to recognize, helping to empower you and those around you. Then, we'll turn our attention to the profound effects of trauma, examining how it can manifest differently in children versus adults. Using these differences is crucial for offering the right support and compassion. Together, let's navigate this difficult but necessary conversation, raising awareness and fostering healing for those affected. Your presence here today makes a difference. So let's begin. All right, our first question for today comes from an anonymous listener. Let's have a listen to their question.
How does grooming work in cases of sexual abuse, and how can people recognize the signs?
Thank you for asking this incredibly important question because it addresses a crucial aspect of sexual abuse that often goes unnoticed: the process of grooming. Understanding grooming is vital because it helps us recognize early warning signs that can prevent potential abuse. So let's talk about grooming. So grooming in cases of sexual abuse generally refers to the manipulative process that an abuser uses to establish trust and control over a potential victim. And this involves a series of calculated steps. It starts with building trust. So the abuser may start by establishing a rapport with the victim and their family. So for example, they might volunteer to help with school activities or offer to babysit, positioning themselves as a trusted adult. Then it moves into isolating the victim. So gradually, the abuser may seek to isolate the victim from their friends and family. And they might suggest that the victim spend more time with them alone, creating a sense of dependency. So gradually, the abuser may seek to isolate the victim from their friends and family. And they might suggest that the victim spend more time with them alone, creating a sense of dependency. Then the abuser might introduce inappropriate physical contact or sexualized conversation in a subtle manner. And I call this desensitizing boundaries. So for instance, they might start with playful touching or discussions about sex that seem harmless at first, making it easier for the victim to accept later inappropriate behavior. And then that moves into manipulating emotions. So the abuser may exploit the victim's emotions using affection or gifts to create a sense of loyalty or obligation. So they might say things like, "I care about you more than anyone else," to instill a feeling of being special or loved. So I would say that recognizing the signs of grooming is essential for prevention. And there are some examples that I'd like to give you that you can watch out for. So, firstly, I would say watch out for any behavioral change. So, if a child who was previously open and happy becomes withdrawn or anxious, it could indicate that something is troubling. So, for example, if they suddenly refuse to spend time with a certain adult or become overly secretive about their activities, it's important to investigate further. Then I would say that if there's any kind of secretive communication happening, and if you notice that a child frequently using their phone or device in private and they become defensive about it, it could be a sign that they're communicating with someone inappropriate. So pay attention if a child has a new friend or a mentor who seems overly invested in them, especially if they have a significant age difference. So, for an instance, a 40-year-old adult spending excessive one on one time with a 12-year-old can be a major red flag. Okay, and watch out for any physical signs. So, look for any unexplained injuries or sudden changes in health or hygiene. So, for example, if a child starts to develop frequent nightmares, bedwetting, or signs of anxiety without any obvious cause, these can be indicators of distress related to grooming or abuse. I would say that creating a safe environment for open discussions is really important. So, encourage children to share their feelings and experiences without judgment. So, they feel comfortable coming to you if something seems wrong. And if you suspect grooming or abuse, it's essential to take action. Reach out to professionals or local support services for guidance and intervention. I hope that answers your question. All right, let's get into our second question for today, which also comes from an anonymous listener. Let's have a listen to their question.
What are some common misconceptions about how survivors of sexual abuse should respond to their trauma?
I think this question highlights the importance of recognizing that trauma is not a one-size-fits-all experience. Each individual's response to trauma is shaped by various factors, including their developmental stage, past experiences, and available support systems. So, by exploring this question, we can deepen our understanding of trauma and improve our ability to provide compassionate and effective care. Look, as a therapist that works in the field of trauma, I've seen firsthand how trauma from sexual abuse can manifest differently in children compared to adults, largely due to the developmental stages, coping mechanisms, and support systems. So, firstly, let's talk about how trauma manifests in children and what it looks like in children. So, children often express trauma in more visible, behavior based ways because they may lack the language to articulate their feelings. And there are some common manifestations that I'd like to point out. So, in children, there's something called regressive behaviors. So, children may revert to behaviors that they've outgrown, such as bedwetting, thumb sucking, or seeking comfort objects. So, for example, a 7-year-old who had been sleeping through the night may start having nightmares and wetting the bed again after experiencing abuse. In children, they often process their experiences through play, so there might be changes in play. So, a child who's experienced sexual abuse might reenact scenarios that reflect their trauma in their play, such as using dolls to mimic inappropriate behaviors. And this can be a way for them to express feelings they cannot verbalize. Then, children also experience emotional distress. So, you might notice increased anxiety, fear, or aggression in a child. So, for example, a normally outgoing child may become withdrawn or fearful of being alone, or they may develop unexplained fears of certain places or people. And with regards to kids, there can be some academic struggles. So, trauma can impact a child's ability to concentrate and perform academically. And they may have sudden drops in grades or lose interests in activities they once enjoyed, reflecting their internal distress. So that's in regards to how trauma manifests in children. Now, with regards to adults, for adults, the manifestation of trauma from sexual abuse can be more complex and often revolves around interpersonal relationships, self esteem, and coping strategies. So what I've seen for adults, there can be intrusive memories and flashbacks. So they may experience flashbacks or nightmares related to their trauma. And these can be triggered by reminders of the abuse, such as certain smells, sounds, or situations, making it difficult to function in daily life. Then adults also experience difficulty with relationships. So, those who've experienced sexual abuse often struggle with intimacy and trust, and they may find it challenging to form healthy relationships, fearing vulnerability. So, for instance, they might enter relationships but keep partners at arm's length, avoiding emotional closeness due to the fear of being hurt again. And they also exhibit something called emotional numbness. So, some adults may exhibit emotional detachment or numbness as a way to cope with their trauma. And they might describe feelings like they're going through life on autopilot or struggle to connect with their emotions or with others. One thing that I do see a lot is self destructive behaviors. So, adults may engage in self destructive behaviors such as substance abuse, self harm, or unhealthy coping mechanisms to manage their pain. For example, an adult might turn to alcohol as a way to numb feelings of shame or anxiety stemming from their abuse. So I would say that it's essential to approach these manifestations both in children and in adults with sensitivity and understanding. And if you or someone you know is struggling with the effects of sexual abuse, seeking support from a qualified therapist can be a crucial step in the healing process because therapy can help individuals of all ages to process their experiences, develop healthy coping strategies, and work towards recovery. Remember, healing is possible and support is available, and you're not alone. As we wrap up, I want to take a moment to remind you that if anything we've discussed today has brought up any emotions for you, help is available. You can reach Lifeline on 131114 or 1-800-RESPECT on 1-800-737-732 at any time. If you're in immediate danger, please call 000. We have more resources linked in the show notes. Remember, you're not alone, and help is always available. You've been listening to Ask a Couples Counselor, a show that answers all the relationship questions you're too afraid to ask. This show is produced by Novo Empower Counselling. We provide a range of services, including couples counselling, individual counselling, and online counselling. To find out more, visit our website novoempowercounselling.com.au. This show was produced with strategy and production support from Wavelength Creative. To make sure you don't miss an episode of Ask a Couples Counselor, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, I'd love it if you could leave me a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm your host, Neha Kapoor, and I'll see you in the next episode.